Interested in betting the games this weekend and want a little more insight? Jay and Drew Dinzik have you covered with Bet the Edge, with new episodes dropping every weekday at 6 a.m. Eastern. Jay, what did you guys cover in today's episode?
Talked MVP market, which I think is really fascinating at the moment, and why I think Josh Allen is a viable bet. And then we covered some games, including Raiders Colts, Chiefs Bengals, and Sunday Night Football, Packers Vikings, and what the plays might be in those games, Connor.
All right, every weekday, 6 a.m. If you got to get up and commute somewhere, fire up Bet the Edge. Let's jump into What's on Tap, of course, brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. Nothing is as easy to enjoy as a Sunday full of football and a fridge full of beer. Here's the games we're keying in on with the highest point totals of the weekend. And we start with Lions at Cowboys. The Cowboys favored now by 5.5. The over-under for this game, Lawrence, set at 52. And largely that's because the Cowboys are averaging 40 points per game at home this season. That's the best in the NFL. But on the Lions side, does this game environment make Jared Goff an appealing play this week, of course, indoors?
Yeah, definitely. And you look at that game total of 52 there, by far the largest of Week 17 here. You got Jared Goff in that dome. That's what's key here. He averages 19.4 fantasy points per game indoors. 260 yards at least in 3 of his past 5 games, and this is a big game for both of these teams, right? So I expect it to be a back and forth, a shootout, passes galore. Both quarterbacks go for 275, I say, at the very least. So yeah, I believe Jared Goff, he will make do in this game versus the Cowboys.
Yeah, we think about the Cowboys' defense as this really imposing unit, but it just hasn't been for the past month or so. They've really struggled. I think the absence of Trayvon Diggs is starting to show itself more.
Yep.
Now, I think the Cowboys will struggle more against the run, and that's how you've been able to exploit the Cowboys' defense recently. And there's perhaps no better team in the NFL to do that than the Lions. But I think with Goff, if they're able to protect against Micah Parsons, then you can throw on this defense. And
Indeed.
I think that the Lions might have the best offensive line in football outside of the Eagles. So I think that they will keep Goff safe, and this is going to be a shootout.
Jay, what do you think of this line dropping a little bit? It's dropped about a point or half a point, but the Cowboys' dominance at home, Lions are a great team. There's no denying that. They could be the 1 seed, but the Cowboys' dominance at home is why it launched so heavy towards them.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think 4.5, 5, that's about right, just because of the struggles that the Cowboys have had on defense. And we talked about this the other day, but they really miss Jonathan Hankins, and that's a problem. If you're missing Jonathan Hankins this much, that's a problem for your defense. Yeah. And I think that the Cowboys, they will be able to score at will on the Lions, but I think the Lions, this is a good matchup for them just because of how effectively they can run the ball.
Our next highest total is the 49ers traveling to play the Commanders. The Niners are 12.5-point favorites in this one. The over-under set at 50. Another big point total here, Lawrence. And a new quarterback will be under center for Washington in Jacoby Brissett, which more importantly, fantasy-wise, does that change things for Terry McLaurin?
I think it does, and I think it changes it for the better. We've seen what Terry McLaurin has been able to do the past 2 weeks when Jacoby Brissett is entered. It's been scary hours the whole season for Terry McLaurin. But them being 12.5-point underdogs, they should have to throw. We saw the 49ers stump out the Eagles, but yet A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts all had nice fantasy days because they had to come from behind. So, McLaurin with Jacoby Brissett this season is 5 targets, 4 receptions, 122 yards in the TD, almost 2 TDs. He got stopped right at the goal line before one, but I expect Jacoby Brissett to play his type of football. He plays that YOLO football. He gonna get that ball and push it down the field. So I think it'll be better for him per se. A guy like Curtis Samuel, it'll maybe lessen in his favor, but for their top guy, Scary Terry, it's gonna be up for him.
Jay, the 49ers coming off an embarrassing loss. There's no way around it. Is this kind of one of those response games where you could see them just running it up 40 and above?
Absolutely. This is the type of game where Christian McCaffrey has 150 yards and 3 touchdowns and just goes absolutely off. But I do think that this is a defense in San Francisco that just hasn't really touched the heights of when they came out of their bye and they just absolutely destroyed Jacksonville and then Tampa Bay and teams of this ilk, and they really shut down the Eagles even though there was garbage time at the end. But, I mean, thing with Baltimore is that their passing offense hasn't been great this year, and Lamar Jackson did whatever he wanted in that second half. So I think it's a problem that Arik Armstead has been out. They've been a different defense without him. He's still not practicing. So I do think this 49ers team is vulnerable. And that's why the total is so high, because look, it's not going to be like a blow-for-blow shootout, I don't think, but I do think the Commanders will be able to move the ball.
If you could protect against them, you got a shot definitely to get something done through the air.
Another game with a high total, the Dolphins at Baltimore. Of course, the Ravens favored by 3.5 points in this one. Expect to be one of the better games of the week. The point total is at 47 here. And Jay, I think the question is, with Jalen Waddle ruled out, who steps up for Miami?
Yeah, well, I mean, the easy answer is Tyreek Hill, who Matthew has ranked as wide receiver 2. I think that is justified. Think back to the early season matchup between these two teams last year where Tyreek Hill did whatever he wanted against the Ravens secondary. Now, this is a much improved Ravens defense. I don't think Tyreek is going to have that type of freedom, but you would expect that he gets absolutely peppered with targets. But honestly, the two guys who I think benefit the most are Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, because this Ravens defense, and we've spoken about this, but they look like an amazing run defense because they don't give up that many rushing yards, but they don't give up many rushing yards because teams are never in game scripts where they can run the ball because they're always losing by a lot because the Ravens are so good. But in terms of an efficiency basis, you can run the ball on Baltimore. I think that's how Miami will want to play this game. That's why I kind of like the under in this one too.
Also, too, I like the under as well. Also, too, with that Ravens defense, I mentioned earlier how they lead the league in sacks. That, too, will, keep a team from running the ball when you're in 3rd and long all the time. Also, if you're in dire straits, you're in need, Cedric Wilson will probably be the next receiver to step up. The last 2 games he's played in 77 and 62% of the snaps. So as far as receivers goes, like, that'll be the next guy. But yeah, I mean, that's like if you're like truly struggling. But I think it's going to be tough for this Miami offense because, like you say, last year, and that was early last year, they played them much different in the front 7 for the Ravens this year.
Yep, no Roquan Smith.
No
from memory
Roquan Smith, and
that game.
was Kyle Hamilton's 2nd game.
Yeah, he's a different player now, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, Cedric Wilson, who Matthew dropped Jerome Ford for, so expecting
So he better go off.
minimum 118 yards.
2
and 2
catches,
touchdowns.
12 yards.
Yeah,
exactly. It's going to be very interesting.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.